I think both Brian and me are glad that I had the dignity to shave my hair off, because otherwise we'd be looking like identical twins now. And we could be running a bit of a really weird Jacko competition. But, well, the reason why we'd be looking that way is because we probably like to do things that are not all too thinkable in the first place. And what you're about to see is an almost finished version of a particular movie, which is
Brasilintime.
Now, in a nutshell, Brasilintime elevator pitch. We got 11 floors. What is it?
Well, I don't, yeah, in 2 sentences. Basically, it started as an idea to bring some of the classic jazz and soul drummers that had played on a lot of the classic breaks together with some of the DJs that live in L.A. And to sort of have a conversation. And it became a short film called Keepintime. And then at screenings of the film, this is kind of all explained at the beginning of this anyway, but I'll do it. At screenings of the film, they would play together. And it kind of became popular. And the Red Bull Music Academy invited us to screen the film, the short, in London in the beginning of 2002, is that right? The beginning of 2002, after screening the short, myself and Torsten went and had lunch with another friend of ours, Fergus Murphy, and they told me that they were going to do it, and they were going to do the next Red Bull Music Academy in São Paulo, Brazil. Would I be interested in bringing basically J-Rock, Cut Chemist, Babu, and then it turned into Madlib to Brazil. I said I would be, and then that I would also like to bring the drummers. And so that's what we ended up doing. We brought the DJs and the drummers to Brazil, where we ended up hooking up with a bunch of Brazilian drummers and a DJ. And then it did this show, and then I've basically spent the last 3 years figuring out how to make the show into a film. And then that's basically what we have today, so.
What's your background? You?
Photographer. I mean, I've been doing, well, I did a book in '93 called It's Not About a Salary, Rap, Race, and Resistance in Los Angeles, which is a kind of oral history of hip-hop in Los Angeles pre The Chronic. And then since then, subsequently, I've done, I don't know, more than 100 album covers. Most recently, I don't know, what have I done recently? The Damian Marley record. What else have I done lately? A bunch of shit for Stone's Throw, Danger Doom. What else have I done? Black Alicious. All the Jurassic shit, Dilated. Back to Freestyle Fellowship and Eazy-E. In those days, I've made my living doing album covers. So, but I've always tried to contribute in some way to the community that pays my rent. So, and Keepintime started out as one of those wacky ideas, like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could use the idea of a photo shoot to bring some people together to have a conversation that otherwise might not have the opportunity to do that. So,
what was the key moment in that short film for you?
The key moment in the film, when everybody saw it, was the moment where Paul Humphrey replays Cut's beat juggling back to him. But the key moment in the studio that day was the J-Rock started pitch phasing a bass line, a Cannonball Adderley bass line over the drum beat that they were playing, and that was where everybody suddenly went like, ooh, you know, something really original that's never happened before is happening right now. Not that has never happened before, but something that we'd never thought would happen is happening right now. So. Yeah,
and how pissed off were you that that was not part of the film?
It is. It's in the film, but it's not. It doesn't. As a part of the film, it doesn't function as a kind of a breakthrough moment. Just because that's how film works sometimes. You know. I mean, I'm sure when you see this, you'll remember things that were like, whoa, and how come that didn't end up in the? But it's just once you get into the process of editing or whatever, it just becomes something different. So.
How hard was it for you to learn to let go? I mean, all us here in the room have to do the same thing when you're editing music, and you just have these great ideas, these great breaks, and you can only use so much in a track. And obviously there you have the same thing, because it probably just doesn't translate as well as you imagine.
Well, I mean, I mean, letting go is the key, I think, you know, for me. I mean, I've never met anybody that doesn't have a good idea for something, whether it's a record, a song, a script, whatever, a photo idea. But the trick is to, number one, the first thing is to get it off the ground, and the second thing is to learn to let it go. And it's the hardest part, really, you know. But I don't know. I study this for a long time, and I pay attention to a lot of people. And you know, you got people like Sun Ra saying things like, you know, make a mistake and do something right. So after a while, you learn to embrace the mistakes and to realize, well, this is as far as we can get it right now, and we just have to start letting go. So yeah, I've been going through that process for the last year. So yeah, this thing started out as like, there was an edit of this film that was over 4 hours long. So we're down to just under 2 hours now. So
what's the overall aim?
We're close. I mean, it'll be around just under 2 hours. I mean, I thought we could get it down to a little bit shorter than that, but I'm happy with it now. I don't want to fight it anymore, and I don't want to feel like I'm just taking things out for the sake of taking them out. You know, it works kind of like a song a little bit. So, but you guys can be the judge of that. Not that many people have seen it, really, to be honest. So, and definitely not this version. So.
What are the things that you visually learned in this, while doing this? You know, from taking your work as a photographer to moving images?
Wow, a lot. I mean, you know, I mean, working in something that's real time oriented as opposed to working in something which is where the time factor is less tangible. I mean, making it the time factor is really important, but you know, in the exhibition of it, in the display of it, you can, you know, some people can take 15 minutes looking at the same photo, and some people won't barely blink an eye at it. But it's when you put photos into a situation where they're time stamped, if you will, it becomes something entirely different, you know. And it's like, well, do you really want to look at the pan for 30 seconds, or will 10 seconds do on this one? And just started to think about ideas like that. And the key thing really is trying to understand how visuals change with sound, and how sound changes with visuals, you know. I mean, we're doing the sound mix for this right now, and it's an absolutely beautiful recording, thanks to you guys. And but it's 48 tracks of like a lot of shit, you know. It's like 6 drummers, 4 DJs, you know, like so. And my sound guys, that's what he always says, you know. He says that you know, when babies are born, they don't learn to hear, they learn to unhear. So it's about the process of mixing, for him anyway, or his philosophy is, it's about what you don't hear is more important really than what you do, or you reach a sort of tipping point where it becomes more about what you're not hearing. So all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't know, it's kind of spent the last 3 years going to film school in some weird way, like, you know. So
it must be kind of weird if you say you got this learning process of unhearing, and as a photographer you had probably a similar experience of unseeing, so
sure.
that you can capture the energy of a whole day, a whole week, or whatever,
sure.
or a life even in that one still.
Sure, it's the same. I mean, that's the point of it is babies, when they're born, everything is there, but everything's out of focus. And so the purpose of learning to see is to put something in focus, which means everything else will be out of focus. So it's kind of a similar thing. It's like learning what to unsee. But it's like memory, you know, like total recall means the collapse of memory. So memory is really completely in a dialectical relationship with forgetting. You know what I mean? That one doesn't exist without the other. So yeah, I don't know, how do we end up? I didn't sleep last night, so maybe that accounts for.
Okay, so we'll probably relieve you for a second and leave a couple of questions till later and let the movie speak for itself.
Sounds good.
What are the things that you are really happy about now when you see it, and that make you feel like, or what are the things that we should watch out for? Or do you want us to go in there totally unbiased?
Yeah, just go in. I mean, I'm really, truly, not that many people have seen this film, and certainly not that many people who have as area of specialty as music as you guys do. So I'd be really, really interested to hear what you guys think, and if you think it's too long, or if you think, you know, just feel free, let it out. If there's things you don't understand, if there's parts that slide by without really not quite figuring out what it's about, just let's hear it afterwards. It'd be great. It would help me, and maybe we can learn a little bit from each other. So
should we dim the lights, get out the popcorn?
yeah, thanks for sticking with it. For those left awake.
Well, I guess one of the main challenges was to overcome the fact that you had like 3 or 4 hours of purely rhythm-based stuff.
Yeah.
And turn that in something that is watchable and take it beyond the concert and place it into context and all that.
Yeah.
Can you probably fill us in?
Well, I mean, they played total for sound checks like 45 minutes. The American part of the show, before we ever brought any of the Brazilians out, was like 45 minutes. And then all of them together on stage was like another hour. I mean, you remember it was like that part that you were just watching is like 3:45 in the morning, basically. It was like, fucking like, whoa, what the fuck are we doing out this late? But yeah, the trick, well, I wasn't so much worried about that. It was kind of figuring out a way to balance it so that it wouldn't just be another concert film. That was my thing, you know, like we had done the concert film thing with the first one, and it's cool, but I think somehow you don't quite get the significance of the conversations that's happening between people if you don't have a context to understand who's really talking to who. You know, this is a thing that people have always said about Keepintime. Even though we've, you know, all the information was there, it's on the DVD, but it's somehow finding a way to map, like, the stories into the music, you know? So, we didn't, you know, I mean, like all the stuff about, you know, turntablism or, you know, records versus long distance phone calls, like all the weird threads that run through it were things that kind of helped me to understand what exactly the story was, or to try and make a map of what the story was, you know? And it's not linear really at all. It's more like a spiral. So it's kind of, you know, that's the way I describe it. It's more like a spiral. So it's quite funny because a record is a spiral, so. But, so that was it. I mean, and I wasn't really interested in making, you know, it would have been easy to make the kind of travel film idea as well. I mean, that was the other sort of like grand narrative genre type of film that we could have done, you know, the kind of Buena Vista thing or whatever. So I wanted to break with that as well and try and make something more essayistic. So, and that was it. I mean, that was it. I mean, a lot of people that see it think, you know, it's like two films. You know, there's the concert, that's one thing, and then there's the story, that's another thing. But to me, it's like they need each other, you know, somehow. So I don't know if I'm even answering the question, but.
Hi, can you talk about the 12 inches that you released with music inspired in the film?
Yeah, like
about the Keepintime and the other one.
Yeah, I mean the 12 inches that we put out of the remixes, or the record they're using in the film. Okay, in the film, like we made a record specifically for the film, where we took. It was basically like a kind of community effort. It was like Otis, myself, Eric Coleman, my partner, Egon, J-Rock, Carlos Nino, who does the whole Build an Art thing. We all kind of had, over the years, had an interest in Brazilian music, so we thought, like, okay, everybody put their favorite parts, if you want, onto a CD, and then we'll sort of sit down and kind of huddle and figure out, like, what's the most appropriate and useful things to go into this kind of a context. I mean, we knew what the context was, but it's just that, like, we had to kind of do speed learning because not everybody had, I mean, Madlib had the deepest Brazilian crates, but even before we went there the first time, we just felt like we were, you know, it was really like scratching the surface, like the amount of music that had made it to us. Anyway, so we made a break record that we could use as a tool to kind of equalize it, you know, and so we wouldn't have to rely so heavily on the duck breaks and, like, you know, all the scratch records that are out there or whatever. And then from the first one, like as the same with this, you know, all the concert parts are recorded with about as good a separation as you can get, considering like it's a fucking big room and everything's bleeding into everything, but like it's all close mic'd, which is a problem on one level because it's difficult, makes it difficult to mix, but on another level, it allows us the possibility then of taking, which is what we did with the first one, taking like 12-minute chunks of the film and giving people like the 24-track version of the 12 minutes and giving each person a different 12-minute section and then having them make music from that. Because, I mean, to me, that's kind of like, I mean, it's one thing to see the experience and to be there, and then it's another thing to see the film, but then it's another thing again to to sort of reinterpret, to finish the loop, to kind of like, to make new music, which is what this whole fucking thing is about anyway. So yeah, so we've done a series of 12 inches now with, yeah, some fucking great people have done mixes from, King Brit, Shadow, Cut, Ono, Otis, I don't know, who else did remixes for us again? Who? Nobody, Elvin, all the heads. And obviously we're gonna try and do the same and a little bit more, push it a little further with this one because there's more music and there's more audio, cool audio to mess with as well, so. Yep. Damn, those are stuck. All right. Come on, Torsten. I don't care. I'll stay where you are. I think it was like 1,100. There was a lot of people tried to get in as well. That's kind of usually, we're very fortunate really. We've kind of had that experience repeatedly, but yeah, I guess there was another 500 people apparently outside who couldn't get in. And we really didn't do, it was only 2 weeks out from it that we actually nailed the venue and were able to announce it and everything, but it was just, it's kind of people understand, I think, or have come to understand that it's a totally one-off thing. And even if we go back there and bring all those same guys, that it's going to be completely a different thing. So, what's up, man?
How difficult was it to mic
It's obviously the process is still going on. I guess I was up all night last night. The most difficult part of it is having anything that's 48 tracks and that has 48 tracks of automation, and then making edits, which is what we have to do, and you really have to cut the 48 tracks. Like we're not like just making a 2-track and then cutting the 2-track. We're like trying to make the real edits, and I don't know how well you know Pro Tools, but like.
How did it sound
Live, it sounds crazy, dude. I mean, it's like you do your own editing. That's what it's like. It's like the craziest jam you've ever heard, and you do your own editing. So if you're standing there, you might just be focusing on Wilson or Paul or James or Otis or whatever, and you'll make sense of it yourself. But really, if you're standing there in front of it, it's just kind of cacophonous, really. It's pretty mad. It has its moments, I mean, it's kind of there's unmistakable moments where everything drops suddenly and like, there's that kind of moment, but it's pretty chaotic, and so to go back and to try and figure out what's important, like what I was saying earlier, like what you shouldn't be listening to right now is really the key to it, It's kind of like, James's kick is incredible, but right now it's kind of fucking up the groove, so just let's lose it. And you just have to be kind of brutal about it. And then it's weird because then there's times when you're looking at picture and you're kind of like, damn, we just heard his snare and now we've seen him playing the snare again, and where the fuck is it? It's gone. Or it's not gone, but it's barely there or whatever, So it's kind of, yeah, it's kind of psychotropic bad trip. It's like too much information, really. So, but the old school way to do it would be to, put 4 or 10 mics, like overhead style-y, and just let it happen. And I mean, there's for and against, you know what I mean? But I just like the idea of trying to make it something that we can then glean a whole bunch of new stuff from. And the best way to do that is by close miking, so. Yeah, it's kind of a trip.
How many times a week do you curse the whole thing?
It doesn't really happen like that for me. I just go through periods of like feeling like ill with it, and just feeling disgusted, and like I want to leave it and forget about it, and I've gone through, like in the last 3 years, man, I've had a lot of, like I've had 10 or 12 times where I was just like, I don't ever want to see this piece of shit again, ever. I don't care. But you just...
But how do you overcome them?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's part of the kind of... I mean, for me, it comes from a kind of responsibility to the people that were involved in the experience with me. So it's kind of like part of the deal of getting these guys to come out and to put blood and guts and to take chances. I mean, Wilson does, Davies, Paul, Humphrey, man, we ain't making their legend status with this. Or James, Gadsden or Durf or any of the DJs really for that matter. So it's really everybody taking a risk together. And then my only responsibility at the end of it is to make something good that I feel like I can sign off on and that it represents what we do. And so I take that that's my life. That's like walking away from my life or something, that's what I do. So, I try to bring that level of responsibility to everything that I do, photos or films or whatever. And so, anytime you do things that are ambitious or that are beyond your means or beyond your, what's kind of easily finished, it becomes problematic, and it does require a kind of like fooling yourself aspect, which I think is difficult for people to understand. But
on various levels, you were trying to learn about cultures that were not necessarily the one that you were born into.
Yep.
I mean, first of all, going to America, and then taking it to a whole nother ball game to go to Brazil.
Yeah.
Learning curves? Anything like that?
Yeah, I don't know. I just fucking... I don't really... I didn't like wake up one morning and decide like, I must go to America and find out about hip-hop music and make photos. And it reached me on a different level first, and then you kind of rationalize it afterwards and you come up with all kinds of reasons. But for me, it's just like following your ears or following your heart or following, I thrive and I live to be able to do things that make my heart beat a little bit faster. And so I don't try to outthink myself or out-rationalize myself, and I certainly don't pay attention to a lot of the rules and regulations of this kind of stuff where, what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do. I try to avoid that and try to, and I don't know, learning curves is what it's about anyway, really, isn't it? I don't know, I didn't sign up like with photography to me, it was never something with a fucking box around it, it was a way to express ideas, and it doesn't matter whether the instrument is like what Joao says, whether it's an MPC or whether it's a Hasselblad. Yeah, fuck it. If it requires a film, then fucking I'll figure it out, Okay, let's do a film then, shit, Like Otis, Like, fuck it, I hear jazz right now. I don't care that I'm a hip-hop producer and I'm supposed to work within the box of what that means, or he fucking threw the box out the window a long time ago, And there's I think that the kind of groundwork that people need to do for stuff like this is to build a community of creative people around you that can support you when you go off the rails a little bit and you go into the unknown territory and you start taking risks, because without the community, say, around Otis doing the jazz thing in L.A., he would have been waiting a long time before he would have got any love from press or from sales or from radio, whatever. But the community that around him supported it, was interested in it, and encouraged it. And so it allowed him to get a little bit further with it. And I feel privileged, like it's the same for me, you know. I mean, all them dudes call me on the reg and like, how's it going? What do you, you know, where's it at? You know, that kind of stuff. And it just allows you to go on, I guess, you know. I mean,
But in an area where it's a lot about what you know or what you seem to know and what you don't know and those rules and so on and so on, I mean, you got a certain disadvantage because you have the camera there. You're recording evidence all the time of whatever is going on. And I mean, you see all these records in there that are passed on, and everyone will be go like, how could whoever pass on this record? He doesn't know whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it takes a little bit more balls maybe to go out there and show all that.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. Yeah, I don't. It doesn't really, you know. I don't really think of it in those terms, really. I mean, I don't know. I just think of it like, how can I contribute to this? Do you know what I mean? I see it as like something that feeds me, clothes me, puts a roof over my head, and I'm interested in having it grow and be better, and whatever skills and knowledge and whatever it is that I bring to the table, then I just give of myself as best I can, as generously as I can, and be as supportive as I can, and create a kind of contributive environment, as opposed to like a more competitive environment where it's like, oh shit, Babs, you passed up on that George Ben record, how absurd, you know. But Babs is looking for different things than we are, and I learn from him as much as I learn from who, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like,
yeah. And I mean, on that side note, in that way you probably give a way closer account about crate digging and beat digging culture than a lot of the documentaries that try to focus on it and were.
Yeah, there's a lot of people have tried to do it, and you know, it's a difficult story to tell, and it's complicated, and it's got a lot of layers to it, and it's not something to be taken lightly. I mean, I've been thinking about that. You know, I mean, a lot of the cats that I know that, you know, has been deep digging since the 80s, and everybody's thought about the idea of the documentary, you know, and it's kind of, you know, it's one of those things, you know. But I mean, I mean, when we went to Brazil, I didn't expect that was the film we were making either. It just kind of snuck up on us, you know. I mean, when I first went to São Paulo, I didn't realize that it was that heavy of a record city, for example. I mean, it shocked the shit out of me. I mean, I was shocked, delighted, elated. I had a reason to get all these guys there now, you know what I mean? And I mean, I learned so much so fast there just by having access to that much music, you know. It was like, it was great. It was a great experience, man. Thanks to this shit, you know, so.
But I mean, there's just a couple of hints in that movie, mostly in the stills, that give you an idea of what kind of a different city Sao Paulo really is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's profound. I mean, it's a profoundly different. It's different than any other city I've ever been in. I mean, yeah. I mean, music at every corner, really. Music at every turn, and interesting. I mean, because, I mean, from you know, the thing that I was most surprised, I guess, or that people would be most surprised about, is when you go to somewhere and you have this sort of respect for the music, the indigenous music of that place. And you go there, and then you meet people that are from there, that are largely indifferent to it, for example, you know. And so it's this weird thing where it's kind of like, somehow by proxy, you know, Cut Chemist can help Brazilian cats to appreciate Brazilian music, you know. And I had never seen that firsthand kind of weird triangulation thing happen before either. So, yeah, I mean, it works. I mean, it works on a lot of, there's a lot of layers in terms of the, you know, how to understand the film, or how to understand what's going on in the film. So that's the way we made it, you know.
Did you at any point feel as some sort of an intruder?
No.
Is that something you learn as a photographer because you're pointing and shooting?
No, there's times when you feel like an intruder, for sure, you know. I mean, I think that's the kind of, it's something you learn to live with. But in São Paulo, no, not really. I mean, we had very good guides, you know, Nuts, Deb, you know, people at Elka, people that took us out into the city. And largely, yeah, people were super welcoming, and it was a good vibe. I mean, it was generally a good vibe. And the drummers were incredible, you know, I mean, really excited at the idea of something like this. I mean, Joao especially, I mean, we learned so much from them. I mean, I always learned from them, but I mean, from when the Brazilian Cats came on board, it was like, whoa. I mean, it was great.
I mean, it's just hinted at some stages in the movie, but one of the amazing things really was the amount of communication going on between the guys who never met really, and
No.
and that's a situation where Zhao messes up the names and stuff, and whatever, it doesn't really matter because
By that point, there's been so many name fuck-ups in the film, it's like, it's kind of like emblematic, you know, it's almost like, yeah, we don't know how to even say each other's names, but it's fucking cool, because we didn't know how to, I mean, I remember when myself and Eric first went there, we were looking for the drummer from Azimuth, you know, and fucking like, everybody's like, what band is Azimuth? And it's Azimuchi, you know, so, I mean, yeah, it was just from the beginning, there's this, but I mean, it runs through the film, you know, the whole Comanche thing, it isn't Comanche, it is Comanche, no, it's Willie Nelson, it's not, you know what I mean, it's just like, whoa, so, yeah, Apache itself, you know, so, yeah, it's kind of, I don't know, it just took I mean, for me, that was the difficult process, really. It was like, I spent a year and a half really figuring it out as far as understanding, like, what is the story here, you know? And if it is something like a weird sleight of hand or a misnaming, then how do we make a film around that, you know? And then after that, everything started to fall into place then, you know? It still took a year to do it, but, you know, that was a...
Did you guys have super drumming in the 80s?
Do we have what?
Super drumming, the TV show?
No, what's that?
It was like the greatest drummer ever on earth, and you would have like, you know, always 2 or 3 cats on one stage, and they would just out-drum each other for like 2 hours. And
Whoa, well, sounds like we should have had it, right?
well, maybe not, because that was probably the good thing about being there, because, you know, when we obviously first, that was one of our biggest fears. It's like, oh, please, not another super drumming.
Okay.
And then when we saw, you know, the shorts, it's like, oh, hang on, there's something else.
Yeah. Nah, it's, I mean, Paul Humphrey says it best, you know, he's like, no egos here, man. You know, we just play together. I just, you know, or like, you know, Wilson says it, like, the best compliment I've ever received in my life is, you don't interfere. You know, and that's the idea. And I mean, you could say the same about engineers, you could say the same about editors, you could say the same about photographers, you could say the same, you know, it's like the best photography is the one that you look at and you don't think photography, or the best editing is where you look at the film and the last thing you think of is editing, or when you listen to the record, the last thing you think about is that somebody's in there adjusting the fucking frequencies, like you shouldn't, you know, so, and so it's the same thing with these cats, but that's something that comes with kind of seasoned, you know, kind of something that you've done for a long time and you've understood that you don't need to say everything you ever wanted to say every time you open your mouth, you know, you can go one sentence at a time and it'll be okay, you know what I mean? So.
One sentence at a time. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. I'm happy to be able to come back here.